All right, everybody. Thank you for everyone being here. And thanks to our special friend, guest, cousin, brother, Coop, for being with us. We'll get to Coop in a minute. Um, we're continuing with our theme of being salt and light, engaging racial injustice. We spent a couple of the last weeks on the topic of education, and then last week we introduced the topic of criminal justice. We'll be in that vein tonight of criminal justice. And each week we start our time by either having somebody take us into a biblical principle or a historical perspective. And tonight, Eugenia is going to start us out by taking us into a historical vignette. And after that vignette, I'll introduce Coop and get us going with the rest of the session. But before we do that, I'd like to pray for our time. Lord God, we come to you. Help us to be soft, to be teachable, to be available people, to learn what you would have for each of us in the midst of this conversation, to shape how we learn, to shape what we do, to shape who we are. And so we commit ourselves and submit ourselves to the work of your Spirit in us tonight as your family, brothers and sisters in Christ, gather together for your purposes, for your glory, and in your power. Amen. So, Eugenia,
Yes.
it's yours.
All right, let's go. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round. Turn me round. Turn me round. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round. I'm gonna keep on walking. Keep on a-talking. Marching on to freedom land. Racial tensions ran high in Montgomery, Alabama in the 1950s. The Supreme Court had recently ruled on Brown versus the Board of Education, making racial segregation in public schools illegal. And in the same time period, the 14-year-old Emmett Till was murdered in neighboring Mississippi, among many other atrocities. And at about the same time, the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery welcomed its new 26-year-old pastor, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. In December of 1955, shortly after he arrived, Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on the bus to a white passenger. On the day of her trial, Dr. King and the NAACP responded with the Montgomery bus boycott. Their purpose was to call national attention to injustice and to pressure the city into reform and full desegregation of the transit system. King led the movement out of his church office in Dexter Avenue Baptist Church. For a whopping 380 days, African Americans walked to work or managed to get rides in some way or another. One of those walkers was Mother Pollard. This is not her picture. She was a 72-year-old member of Dexter Avenue Church. We do not even know her full name or have a picture of her. It is possible that she's in this picture, but we don't know. Due to her age and declining health, organizers offered her rides, but she declined, saying she'd keep walking. After several weeks of walking to and from her employment, someone asked Mother Pollard, "Are you tired?" To which she replied, "My feet is tired, but my soul is rested." Some years later, King included stories about Mother Pollard in his sermons, one of which told about after a particularly difficult week during the bus boycott, Mother Pollard approached King after a meeting at the church. Perceiving his fatigue in body and soul, she reminded him, "I done told you, we is with you all the way. But even if we ain't with you, God's gonna take care of you." King would repeatedly reference the solace and encouragement he took from the words of Mother Pollard. She was one of his important spiritual guides. Sometimes very small actions make a big difference. I don't know what's coming for our country in the next few weeks, but there may be a time for some of us to use our aching feet or to lift our voices or to get into some good trouble. And remember that God's going to take care of us. Ain't going to let nobody turn me round. Turn me round, turn me round. Ain't going to let nobody turn me round. I'm going to keep on walking, keep on talking, marching on to freedom land.
Wow. Thank you, Eugenia. Whew, good to get those stories.
Yeah.
So our presenter tonight is Anthony Cooper Sr. He sometimes goes by Anthony, sometimes by Coop. He can decide what he wants to be tonight. Coop and I worked together at Nehemiah for a number of years, and I consider him to be a brother in faith and a friend and a co-laborer in this kingdom work that we're doing, in this important work. And so I was glad that Coop was willing to be with us tonight. And as he and I were talking about how tonight would go, and would he present or do a slideshow or an interview and or what, Coop said, Rich, you and I are friends. We're colleagues. We're brothers. We're in this together. Let's have a conversation. And let's see the rest of the people that are joining us as part of the family. And let's just have a family talk tonight. And that just made sense to me. And so we would like to model in our conversation what it means to be a Black brother and a white brother in this together, as friends, as colleagues, as partners. And so we're just going to take it as a conversation tonight. I've got some questions that I want to ask Coop, but we're going to have a lot of time for the rest of the family to pitch in as well, and to learn alongside and with and from Coop this evening. So before we get, Coop, to your work, I know that one of the things in my relationship with you is ahead of work is first your relationship with God, and then it comes your family. So would you tell us some about your family?
Yeah, I can. So one of the things I get, first I gotta brag on my beautiful wife who keeps me focused and will put me in a chokehold if I do not if I do not put myself in line and act accordingly, right? Making sure I show up at home every night and tries to make sure that and I said try, so hopefully she's not in the room right now, so I can say that tries to make sure that I come home at a decent hour. I'm not staying up late on the computer and making calls, but sometimes it gets a little difficult, right? But she does, yeah, she's an amazing woman that I've been blessed to marry. We just celebrated 14 years of marriage in October 7th. And so also I have two wonderful sons that are both military men. I have two sons. My oldest is in the Navy. He's a boatsman's mate in the Navy. So he helps drive the ship that he's on a U.S. destroyer. And then my youngest son is actually in the Army Reserves. He's an engineer and a part of for carpentry and helping building things. He's actually in Kadar currently right now as we speak. It's very interesting times for us. My family, my mother's here in Madison. I've been in Madison for like the last, I want to say since I was 15, yeah, 15 going on 16, and really, I grew up here. This is Madison is home, and family to me is everything. I know without them, without me having my focus probably mainly on them first, we would not be. We would not actually have this conversation right now. I'm a man that, yeah, I'll just stop there. So I won't kind of put everything out there. But yeah, so that's a little bit about my family. Yeah, they all of them are extremely amazing and really has helped me not only grow but also it keeps me focused in what I do and what I do in the community.
Coop, that's one of the things I most appreciate about you. As I used to pretend like I supervised you, um, but I would want to be asking you questions about your work and stuff, but we ended up spending a lot of time talking about you as a son and as a dad and as a husband and as a brother, and that meant a lot to me that our relationship wasn't merely about work, and my supervision of you wasn't really about work. It was really about who you were as a person and who you are as a family person. And I will concur that you married well.
Yeah.
Um, I think you have a tremendous better half. And for the rest of you, I don't know a person that puts more hours into their work than Mr. Anthony Cooper. And so literally half of my supervision time was, what's Alicia saying? Are you guys okay? Are you home enough? Um, there's a big testament to who you are as a family person and how you make that a priority in the midst of craziness of work. Do you do anything for fun? Are you still walking and running? Do you still have a cycle? Are you ever getting off to the back roads?
You know what? Well, I got rid of. I used to have a three-wheeler, but yeah, I did get rid of it. It just too much crazy stuff going on. And I was like, I just go ahead and got rid of it. My motorcycle, I definitely that was my toy. That was my other joy. But later on in life, I may get one or something else. Who knows? But I still go running or walking from time to time. Not as much as I feel like I should, but photography has been something I kind of picked up and been doing quite a bit now. I do it for fun and family and friends, just kind of or sometimes I just go to different events and just shoot just for the heck of it. That's been kind of something that has really given me a different type of balance, I feel. And it kind of takes me out of the world of the other
Yeah.
stuff, what I do. Yeah, so
Am I remembering right that the group that you used to be a part of was called Black Men Run?
yes, yep. That is definitely is correct.
I still am curious about that name because it has too many other connotations, my brother.
Exactly. Oh, yeah. I think one of the things that where they, because of it was really just a focus on Black men's health and just saying how running was something that most Black men, they running one is it wasn't something that what we always did on a regular basis, right? And so it's just being able to provide the healthy part about running, right? And what that contributes to who you are, getting your heart rate up and things of that nature. So, but definitely to what you were saying, Rich, as far as there's other stuff that could have definitely you can tie that to,
Yeah.
that are not always necessarily positive.
Okay, CPC family. Coop is, I would say realistically, the face of reentry in Madison and beyond the rest of Dane County. There's a couple other significant players, but I think Coop's the man that owns the space that God has put in this time and place for God's purposes in the reentry world. So Coop has a couple jobs. One of them,
What do you mean by reentry?
formerly incarcerated persons who have come back to the community either on probation, parole, or are off paper. So helping formerly incarcerated persons re-enter our community as productive citizens in this area.
Go ahead, Rich. All right. All right.
So one of his jobs is with Nehemiah, with whom CPC is a community partner. And at Nehemiah, he's the vice president of strategic partnerships and reentry. And he's also the CEO of a more recently formed organization called the Focused Interruption Coalition. So the Nehemiah is more on the reentry side, and the FIC work is being frontline interrupters of violence, disparities, incarceration, injustices, especially among impoverished communities in the Madison area. So Coop is the one that's getting the phone calls from the city or the county if there's a hot situation going on that needs to be diffused. He's the one that's working with the guys in the jails and the prisons. He's the one working with particularly men as they come out and are helping them in the midst of finding support groups, finding employment, having a place to live, having an address so you can apply for a job because you need an address to apply for a job, helping the guys on ankle bracelets that will be on bracelets for the rest of their lives figure out how to navigate that reality. So his portfolio is huge. The demand on his time is significant. But Coop, would you be willing to share with the crew a little bit about your story and why this is your area of ministry and work?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're family here, so one of the things is for me, going on almost about 20 years ago now. I was incarcerated. I was a person that when I was released. I mean, reentry, just the title reentry now is became a big thing, but it was not when I came home. So I didn't have any help. I didn't have anyone to be able to give me the navigation tools. So there was a lot of stuff I had to figure out on my own, and really being able to, one of the things that I think really even helped me change my life more than anything is the fact that when my sons came to visit me while I was in prison, and my sons wanted to stay with me there because that was the only time I was ever away from them. They were young, they were babies at the time, 1 and 2 years old, where it was really pretty much, like, hey, my dad is here, so I want to stay here. As we all know, especially when you have kids or raise nieces or nephews, a very just a simple fact that when they have that love for you, they love you unconditionally, right? And so one of the things was really on my mind more than anything when my sons, I mean, they cried and cried because they wanted to stay with me. It was almost heartbreaking for me to say I didn't want them to come anymore, right? And so in that, I constantly thought I cannot allow this to become their reality. So whatever I did once I came home, because I knew I was gonna come home, but of course, if it was ways that I could have some support, but I didn't, I come from a not only impoverished community, a single parent home. We didn't have the access to the financial access to be able to help um, a man or my mother just didn't have it, or my family didn't have it. So what I knew how to do, I knew if I went back to selling drugs, what 9 times out of 10 what would have happened, I was going to end back in prison. So my first job was Papa John's Pizza. After filling out applications, probably about 360 applications, and being denied time and time again. I even had an employer tell me, "How do I know you're not going to sell drugs?" And at my warehouse, I said, "Sir," and this was a furniture store, and I said, "Sir, I want to do something different from my life." And after me giving him my story and just kind of just saying, "Hey, this is what I want to do," still did not have that chance. So it went from me working from Papa John's Pizza, eventually, end up, and I was the best pizza flipper in there. As I would say, I was the best pizza flipper, right? But at the same time, it was one of those things that where I knew I couldn't give up, and things were hard during that time, trying to pay rent and make $4.75 at the time. That was and raise 2 sons on top of that. It was almost pretty much, and this is me being honest with you all, because again, we're family, right? So the streets were calling me at the same time, like, look, I know I can go and sell drugs and make 30 times that, right? But at the same time, I couldn't honestly look in my son's face and say, Daddy's just got locked up again, or or if my house got raided, or whatever. It would have been really good on a, I guess, on the front end, but in the back end of things, who knows what could have happened. Yeah. So, so in the mix of that, I just kept pushing, kept going forward from being able to work in a warehouse, and then eventually being able to actually going back to school. Worked for web crafters, did really well, and going back to school during that time, and then ended up getting that opportunity of becoming a job developer, working with people with disabilities, being able to help them navigate. And then actually, it was something that I feel like the employer didn't necessarily think it was something I would be good at, but or as good at, ended up being it was something that it was more of a calling. And the Lord, I feel, really, He navigated my life, but I had to make the choice, like all of us do, right? And everything that what we do. And so I made the choice to do something different, to do something, even go through my own struggles, but keep going forward. And in that, the Lord kept blessing me and blessing me and blessing me and giving me a different understanding in life, and also building confidence as well. Eventually he saw that manager ended up seeing the owner of that company saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. Actually then eventually when he asked me to sign a non-compete, I was told not to sign it, so he let me go. Definitely, it was like I was like, oh no, this can't happen. I wanna, but at the same time, and this is again where I always have to say this. This is where God often he kind of, I'm gonna say kind of, he knocks and says, hey, listen to me, I have you, right? So I'm literally driving down the street, and there was a counselor that actually started blowing at me. I didn't know who it was. I thought it was somebody I cut off. He said, hey. So I looked and he asked me to pull over. I'm like, oh, hey, how you doing or whatever. He was like, hey, have you ever thought about becoming a contractor for the state and government? Honestly, family. I was like, in my mind, like, no, I never thought of that. But, but definitely it'd be something I'd be willing to do. And I think even from that was my journey, and the confidence I needed kind of went from there. And I've been able to do some other marvelous things by stepping out on faith. Sorry if I thought it was a little bit.
No, that's good. Thanks. Coop, I mentioned some of the stuff that you do that's involved with reentry and FIC. Do you want to just fill that out a little bit more for everybody? We give people a sense of what the pieces parts are of all the work that you do in this community.
So for definitely for my reentry work, I work with all the state and federal institutions, as well as working with the state and federal probation agents and judges, and being able to help people navigate life when they come home from being incarcerated. I'm trying to help them to be able to, and I even hate to kind of use the word help. I want to say we help each other because it's a partnership, right? To be able, because they have to do their part as well, and being able to navigate, and being able to ask the questions that a lot of times they don't want to, or are afraid to, but as well as being able to connect them with different resources throughout the community. And a lot of times, and Rich, just to kind of, and Rich, you may or may not remember this, and we have quite a few people who may call from Milwaukee, even way up north, Alcorn, some other, because people are being released to to the communities. I want to say probably, well, I will say every day. So, so in that, that's one big part of what I do, and also being able to provide housing and then advocacy, mentorship. That's something that what a lot of individuals when they come home they need, as well as doing job placement and so on. So that's one part of it. But then also for the Focus Interruption Coalition, the other part of that is where I'm responding, and also I have a team that also will respond as well to incidents of gun violence that happen in our community. So to what Rich was saying, as far as I do get the calls at 2, 3, 4, 5 in the morning when they just heard about someone either was shot or family members are at the hospital because their loved one is shot, and being able to help those family members navigate the situation. When you have a doctor that may be a doctor or nurse that are there to be able to assist and help out those families, and they do a phenomenal job. But at the same time, when it's the trauma piece of that, because some of that, people are not, it's not like we're having a conversation. And so if you're trying to navigate that conversation, a lot of times, especially when you're dealing with people that who may look like me, we have to be able to navigate that conversation a little bit differently, and being able to step in to not be able to create trauma on top of trauma. That means someone going to jail, someone someone acting out in a violent way at the hospital, or even on the scene when you have a mother, father, sister, or brother that is trying to see whether or not if that's their loved one that is underneath the skirt, which we call the blanket that is typically put over someone when they know someone has just gotten when someone is deceased. Um, so those are just some of the things that what I do as far as, and on top of that, we work a little bit differently from the DA's office, where we work with the perpetrator as well, because everyone is affected, right? The victim as well as the perpetrator, and being able to say, hey, you know what? Let's try to figure out ways how we cannot. So we need this violence to stop as much as possible. What can we do to assist? How can we help you? And so our conversation is definitely a lot different than what MPD, the DA's office, will have with individuals that who may want to escape, who may want to be able to start over, who may want to do something with their life differently, who is, if I'm being honest with you, who is tired of what has already been happening, not only in their life, but then also in their children's life, and really talking about trauma. Because a lot of it is based on generational trauma as well, that we don't necessarily, that I don't feel like is addressed enough.
Coop, I can only watch and somewhat imagine the weightiness of all of that, of what you're dealing with people's lives, their trauma, the messiness, the brokenness, the struggle, the sometimes people having great parole officers and sometimes those that are just a pain in the, you
Yeah,
know,
you've been there.
and yeah,
Right.
and it's the advocacy and the all that work is just weighty. It's important, it's significant, it's hard. And I often wonder in life, in certain circumstances, if people have a big enough why for the what that they're going through. And the what's that you work are hard. So, what's the why? What motivates you and what energizes you? In addition to getting your own life together and wanting your sons not to be in that situation, but what keeps you going um, with your? I don't know. I would guess you're working 80 to 100+ hour weeks.
Yeah, I mean it's a 24/7 type of thing, right? So, and
So, what's the why for the what? What energizes you? What motivates you?
for me, the why is honestly is doing the right thing for the right reason, right? And the fact that I didn't have access to the different resources, or I didn't always have people who could talk clear sense into my life, right? That who were consistent. So it's one thing of just being able to just be there just for the moment, but it's another thing of being able to say, hey, I'm here because I want to see you do something different. I want to be a part of what that difference is, and being okay with and being okay with people even telling me no, right? Because some people are not ready yet. And I think that where for I had to for myself, it was really just a thing of that's where my heart is set. When even and honestly, even when I think of a bigger part for me as well, this is something I'm passionate about. There's been times that even though that there's work to what I do now, but there was also times where this is what I did just for the fact of just being there for free,
Yeah.
right? This is, there's times that where people, there's a lot of, there's still, as Rich would probably get on me if he was my supervisor, there's a lot of stuff that I just do for the strength of the fact of I understand the situation, and because I've been there. And if I wasn't there all the way, there's been times where I've had that thought, because everyone may not know God the way how we may know God, right? But when people see God in us, it's easier for us to have a conversation about who God is and how it works, how God has worked in my life. not just it's not just in talk, it's in deed, right? So that's one of the things that what I try to pass on as much as possible.
So Coop, how bad is the criminal justice system here, and how big's the need, and is it working or is it not working? You know,
You know.
so I, back in the day when you and I were working together, I
Mhm,
always heard and quoted that if you were a Black male 18 to, I don't know what, 25, 30,
mhm,
that Madison-Dane County, or maybe tied with Milwaukee, was the worst place in the United States to live.
mhm.
And I would have always guessed that would have been Alabama, Mississippi.
Uh-huh.
But I think the reality is that Madison-Dane County, Milwaukee may be the worst in the country. So can you tell us a little bit about what the reality is for criminal justice for young Black men?
I mean, so a lot of things when, especially when it comes to, you got to think about impoverished neighborhoods. Excuse me. Impoverished neighborhoods, 9 times out of 10, there are people who live in a trailer park that who live better. There's nothing wrong with living in a trailer park, but they have a different understanding of how life goes on in a trailer park compared to, if you look at, we're talking about Madison, where we can talk about Milwaukee as well, that where people are struggling, they're struggling on the fact that they have the exact same zip code. So if so think of it like this: if your zip code is affected about how of where you work, where you go to school, what resources are put into that community. Now I'm just talking about just your zip code, right? Not, I'm not even, getting into the west side, south side of town, just the zip code. If that alone affects all the different pieces that can contribute to your life in a positive way, and but yet you're not having a positive reinforcements, what do you think are going to happen? 9 times out of 10, that's why you have the ghettos of society. That's why you have the crime in society and in different communities. That's why you have, because the resources are not there, and not only are the resources are not there, there's not enough positive reinforcements that are there. So when even, and this is, I guess it may even get even deeper into a conversation, if when you talk about why are officers shooting young Black men, right? A lot of it is not is a lot of it is off of fear. This is something that what I've had real conversations with officers about. Like, I have officers that are good friends of mine that who I trust, right? And so in being able to have those types of conversations and say, hey, if you did not know me, but yet you know how, if you didn't know me, I approached you. The first time we ever talked, it was like, oh, okay, well, I was just he gave me the to me, I always call it the bubblegum answer of saying, oh yeah, I treat everyone the same way, right? So if you didn't know me, I'm coming from this neighborhood, and then the only thing you knew is that some of the people in this neighborhood carried guns. What is your first thought? As we grew in relationship and asking the same question again, and him being honest with me, my first thought is, 9 times out of 10, I feel like you carrying a gun and you're a threat. Now we can have the exact same conversation. Like, currently right now I live on the west side. So have the exact same conversation. And if I live in Verona, right? And in Verona, because of my zip code and because of where I'm at, it's pretty well, I don't even want to say it's diverse, because it's not. I think I may be the only man of color probably in my building, now that I think about it, but that's a whole nother story. Right. So 9 times out of 10, if they were to come here for a reason, for whatever reason, because of my zip code, and because of my zip code and my complexion, he would look at me differently. Because 9 times out of 10, he's gonna still look at me as a threat, but maybe not as much as a threat. Maybe. But if Rich, if hopefully you don't mind me using you for instance. So if Rich was in the exact same situation and he went to go and talk to the officer and say, hey, how's things going or whatever, or he's upset or whatever about whatever was going on, typically officer friendly would typically address him like, hey, how's things going? You know, try to calm him down in that situation. It's not, let me think about pulling my gun just in case if he moves too fast. These are the types of conversations that I'm having with officers. I'm having with them in a safe place of saying, hey, why have it? Why is it that you look at me more as a threat than as a person?
And
Right.
that's something that we can hear from you and try to think about and understand, but that's so not
Yeah,
our experience. You know,
exactly.
I don't wake up every morning and look in the mirror and have to think about my color
Hmm.
in a way that you do every day in a multiple number of situations.
So,
There's so,
bro,
go
I'm sorry.
ahead.
I just want to add this. It's funny. I'm glad you just said that because I was sharing with my wife. So I stay in an apartment now, and where I live, I was like, okay, well, I say I want to go, I like to go walking at night at times where I used to, but where I have to think about, I may go walking at night and if someone thinks something differently, and of course people are carrying guns and things of that nature. Someone, I don't care. I even have hold on, let me see. I think it may be, oh, I was gonna show you my reflective jacket that I have. But honestly, it's a fear because I'm like, man, if I go out and someone thinks something, then they may shoot, right? And ask questions later because you got this, I'm 6'1" burly faced guy, and that typically, of course, it's cold out. I'll have a hat on. Someone may fear in their life. So, or fear is though that they have that or see me as a threat. That becomes a challenge for our community as a whole. Because of, yeah, for
Hey,
a lot of different reasons. Go
so
ahead.
Coop, time's flying here, and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
had a couple more questions for you, and I want to have questions from the rest of the family here. But real quick, are there things that are encouraging you or that are working right? Are you seeing police officers or judges? Are you seeing allies or churches? What is helping? What's working? What's encouraging you?
What is actually encouraging me is that people are at least now willing to have the conversation. What's encouraging me is the fact that we're having this conversation right now, right? Of course, I know Martha, I know Rich, I know Barry, right? But some of you and David, I feel like I've met you before, but it, yeah, I didn't want to put my foot in my mouth because you're right on my screen. But you
There,
know,
okay, yeah. At Moses, I've been in the Moses
right.
meetings.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I never forget a face. Sometimes I'm
Yeah,
bad with names, but I never forget a face. But I think those are the things that are encouraging me, and that people are really trying to have the bold conversation. But I think what also is encouraging me, my white brothers and sisters that who are actually stepping up and saying, you know what, that there's something wrong about this, right? There's something that just it's just not clicking when you look at the bigger picture. Um, um, because it was something. So when they were having the protests and stuff downtown, right? I'm very for protesting, but having peaceful protests, right? That's something that I believe in, having peaceful protests. But it was something that I thought was actually magical, almost in a sense. That so one of the as they're doing the protest, they asked the white brothers and sisters to surround the men and women of color, right? And the fact that you think about, if you really think how deep that is, right? The fact that where you have our white brothers and sisters, if they're surrounding us, that's a force field because they know in the mix of everything, this to be. I think about if in the mix of all of you all, you're being comfortable in the fact that you know that you would not be harmed.
Yeah.
When most men and women of color can never truly say that they have that as a security in United States. So I'm sorry. Go ahead, Rich.
No, Coop.
I'm just saying that's
uh,
just yeah.
Yeah. Um, so you're here with a family of people who are working to want to be white allies and wanting to work to be anti-racist. And what would you say to us? Do you have practical things, particularly in the area of reentry or just generally in terms of engaging these tough issues of injustice as allies? are there things that we can do? Are you guys still running court advocacy partner stuff? Do you have other suggestions of what we might do to learn or to be involved as allies?
I think in every way possible, definitely be willing to learn. I think of, from, being a part of Justify Anger. I'm drawing a blank to the name of it. Sorry, it's been
The
a little.
history class,
Yeah, the history class.
History for a New Day, or whatever
Yeah,
that is. Yeah.
yeah. So I think that those things help. I think also a lot of times even just being able to make the connection. Like, to me, this is something, and I'm glad Rich had mentioned this earlier. I do believe in, hey, we're family. So because we're family, we need to be able to act like that, right? And being able to have conversations that are outside the box. And not to say that everyone is going to be that open, but I do feel like having these things and allowing yourself to be able to hear other voices, and also allowing yourself to, honestly, even being willing to encourage other voices is well. I think that that's something that is definitely something to do. Of course, I mean, being able to support organizations and things of that nature. I think, though, of course, all those things are that's definitely a plus. But I think even in the support, you can't just support and walk away. I think it's the more and more that we work together as in unity, and being able to, address different challenges that are happening in our community, that together as a community, that's when things change, right? That's when we have the impact that we need to have long term. And until we do that, because we can always throw some dollars at something, but that's great. But at the same time, that eventually runs out. But the time and effort that you put in, and also being able to bring other people who look like you and having the conversations outside of just the I won't say the Zoom walls, right? Those are the things that would help. Those are the things that's how we get to being able to change our community.
And Coop, if there's specifics that we could partner with your reentry housing or with the court advocacy or observer kind of thing, or anything else, could you and Charla put together a little list of practical specifics, and then I'll get it out to everybody in the crew?
Yes, I can definitely do that. Definitely, I can do that with no problem. Yeah, I'll take care of that. Actually,
Yeah.
take care of that right away.
So I don't want to hog all the conversation with you. Um, and so I'd like to let the rest of the family have some minutes to interact and ask some questions and have conversation as well.
Awesome.
So feel free, if you have a question, just to unmute yourself, and we'll see your box light up and you can talk to Coop.
And something I'll say: don't be shy. Like, honestly, you throw questions at me like crazy. Just don't throw your shoe at me, or don't throw the shoe at the screen.
Coop, I had somebody text me and ask, are there practical ways that white allies can be a part of FIC, or is that really your and your team's work to do?
No, no. So one of the things about for FIC, it's not just a Black thing, right? One, violence is something that happens all throughout. I mean, throughout the United States, but also, it's something that's happening in our community. So we always try to find different ways of being able to um, um, volunteers, or for folks to be able to help out, from whether if it's from financial donations or helping us write grants, from being able to, so it's always ways of being able to find ways of being able to help. And we definitely appreciate it. um but yeah, so you may not want to be a part of the call at 2-3 o'clock in the morning. And honestly, may not want you to be a part of that scene, because and from and being honest with you all, there's been times that where you seeing dead bodies and things of that nature. There's no, that of someone being shot, not just someone passing of natural death, is not there's nothing beautiful about that, you know. And so those are the things that sometimes they get hard, right? They get tough, and you know, and they sit with you for forever. So those are just, and those, I'm throwing that out there because I want people to really understand the reality piece of it, of what we do for FIC. It's so much deeper than just um, with being there for families and things of that nature, but then also for my team to also to being able to help them navigate other stuff that is kind of, because also that can bring up past traumas and things of that nature as well. So also I'm very sensitive with people who I have involved in that type of work, and I navigate that as well. So
Martha?
So, hey, hi, Coop. Thanks so much for being with us tonight and sharing all the great stuff you're doing and your story. Not that you're not doing enough or that there's not, but if there were more, if you had more resources, whether it was time or money or people, what are areas that you are there needs that you're seeing that you're not able to sort of address or get to or spend as much time as you would like to? What are there areas like that you're facing? I'd be interested in hearing sort of what those are.
I mean, definitely, one of the areas is being able to find more finances to be able to hire more staff, to be able to assist in this work. We're currently right now on the fixed side of things. I have a team of 7. We also we have some CSWs who are currently working on a grant, well, working a part of a grant in a community right now to be able to help when things happen in that community. So that's one piece. But then also to help us to be able to find other employers or other employers that and felony friendly employers, right? To be able to give people different opportunities to be able to live life differently. So one of the things that would make me different from a lot of folks is the fact that by me having that employment background, by doing job development, I'm working for a national firm and also doing job coaching and things of that nature, it allows me to be able to work with people differently. So when we place someone into a job, and this is with my Nehemiah hat on, as well as my focus hat on, is the fact that where I don't just leave them there. I just say, hey, you know what? You got them, figure it out, right? It's one of those things that where I continue to make sure that we have a relationship with the employer and also make sure we have a relationship with the employee. There's not enough, I don't feel like there's enough employers who are willing to meet people where they're at, knowing that they have that proper support. But then also housing is another piece that is critical right now. And I shouldn't say right now, has always been critical.
How many beds are you guys running?
Right
How
now,
many apartments?
I think we have probably about 42 now. Beds that's but that's just for men. That's just for men through Nehemiah. If I'm able to move someone into one of our houses, that will work. But at the same time, it's still not enough. We want to, it's just not. When you look at the need, the need for family housing, the need for just women and children, right? To be able to give people a leg up, to be able to do something different with their lives, right? So all of that is yeah. So even if we just kind of just hit on those 3, I'll use one of Richard's words, those 3 pillars, right? If we were to just talk on those 3 pillars, but maybe even at some point, I think of being able to help people get connected with other folks who don't necessarily look like them. Not saying to always have an understanding, and honestly, if I have so many different relationships in the community, and a lot of times it's some with people who do believe and some people who don't. I think sometimes us as Christians, we do not do that as well as also being able to have conversations with non-believers, right? on a regular basis. That's something that I don't feel like I'm gonna say I shouldn't put everyone in a box, but that those things do not happen enough. But it's not always having a conversation to be able to convert someone. Is being able to just let people see the God in you. But right, and then that shines more. And I believe I said that a little bit earlier too. That shines more than anything. So it's not what you talk about; it's what you show me. Um, yeah. So to be able to really transform someone's life.
That brought up a question for me, and
Thank you.
I was wondering whether you have, obviously your faith propels you to take on the work. That's
Mhm.
obvious. But what kind of freedom do you have to bring in your faith, obviously, to the work? Are there limitations on what you can and can't say to the folks you work with?
No.
Good.
No, right? But short answer is no. But long answer is typically, and this may even sound a little crazy, right? Is that typically some people will ask you, like, what made you do? I've had people in the mix of a situation that I had to because I'm also trained in de-escalation. So that actually when out coming from a de-escalation type of realm, I'm talking about where it was people about to fight the police, there were fights happening in the mix of all of that, and I had a person ask, why do you care so much? Why do you do what you do, right? And then a lot of times I say, hey, I say I'm not trying to push anything on you, but I feel God has me here for a bigger purpose, and this is a part of my purpose. And sometimes just that alone helps people look at things differently. Not trying to, what they say. A friend of mine used to say this. He said, "Beat people upside the head with the Bible." Right. Sometimes you have to be able to you have to put the nuggets there, or you have to put the book there in order to allow them to open up the pages and allow that to happen on their own.
Coop, when you go into jails or prisons, do you have okay to have your faith be part of the conversation and everything?
Yeah, I've never been challenged in that, but yeah, I mean, I definitely, because I've sat down and talked with Muslims, atheists, and so on and so forth. So that part no one's never tried to restrict that part of me. And even, and I will even share this about myself as far as, so growing up, I always knew that there was a God, and that was something that where my mother definitely installed in us, but we weren't the church going family either, right? We weren't hey, all right, let's sit down and let's talk about this verse in the Bible and being able to, what does that mean for us in our life, right? And I think I shouldn't say I think, I know, even now, a part of so my mother, from her own traumas and things of that nature, that where I feel even for my mother, like now she's attending women's group, right? And where they're talking about the Bible. She's like, and she doesn't say it. If my mother was here on the call, she would say, well, I may not go every day, but I go, right? You know what I mean? Just to be able to understand and hear the word, right? And that is a big step, because in the mix of that, she's also feeling a different part of community, what God wants us all to have, right? What God wants us to be able to walk in. And that's the thing that for her, and I see it where my mom would say, oh, I was in fellowship today and I was just thinking about, like, God has really, really, blessed our lives. And she may have said, God has blessed our lives in different ways, but this, to hear that from my mother in a different way, she's had some health challenges and things of that nature. And she's like, oh, she says, I'm sorry, I'm trying not to tear up, so I'm holding back a little bit. But for her to hear her say, like, I'm just so thankful of what God has done in our lives. To hear that come from my mother, which growing up, I never heard that, right? You know what I mean? So that for me alone is definitely, that's a testament to life and to who God is, but also that also shows power and the strength of who in His name, and and gives me even strengthens me even that much more to say, you know what, I need to be this. And the this is, I have to be able to keep pushing forward so people can see who God is. And I'm not going to sit up here and act like everything is perfect, because it's not. But that's something else that what I feel like we don't talk about enough, but we should talk about even as Christians, is that one, there's only one perfect person, right? You know what I mean? Or only was one perfect person, right? And so, but God doesn't ask us to be perfect either.
Okay, Coop, I really hate to do this because
No problem. Yeah.
I would love this conversation to go on and on and on, but to honor people's time and your time, I want to say thank you so much. And thank you not only for this hour, but thank you for treating us as family and letting us in as part of your family. And thanks for what you do. And thanks for who you are. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you, and I'm grateful that God has put our two lives together. So, couple things. You owe me a practical list of ways that people could get involved, and I'll bug you and Charla for that. And would it be okay to give people your email address?
Yes, of course. Of course. We're family, right? You can always email me. You can call me too, but
A Cooper. So anybody at Nehemiah's first initial last name. So it's going to be A Cooper at nehemiah.org. So if you want to follow up with Coop, that's the way to get in touch with him. And before I talk about next week and what we're doing then, Barry, would you pray for us and for the work that Coop is doing?
Thank you, God, for this time and for the life experience and decisions and determination, ongoing learning curve, and just the deliberate, hard work that's being done by people like Coop in this community to serve people who are trying to re-enter the community and make a different kind of change in their life, but who need a lot of help and who face a lot of resistance and a lot of hurdles, a lot of obstacles. Help us to continue intentionally in our own learning process about the realities that are maybe very different from what we will personally experience, and help us to be determined as well to be part of real change and real service, real treatment of people with dignity who are made in your image, and to welcome them back into this community and give them the support that they need. Thank you for Coop and for his experience and his time with us tonight and his service. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
So,
I'm sorry. I was going to ask, can I just add one thing?
Yeah.
Because I do also just want to just mention that the only way that we can do the work that we all do in the community is the fact that we have to be able to do it together. And I also have a team as well who helps me throughout this process. I won't read it to you, but definitely I know we're on. And something that I read often, or sometimes it just comes to my mind, is John 17:23 and 23. And just that alone, I'll just leave it there. Peace.
That's perfect. That's a great way to end it. And I love that you're making everybody pick up their Bibles. So next week, we our intent is to shift gears toward the topic of economic development and the disparities there. What we are actually going to do is introduce the topic. Barry will point us towards some resources and give us some homework. And the 2-week content will actually be combined into the week of the 11th with the CEO of YWCA. And next week, in addition to Barry introducing that topic for us, we will spend most of our time in prayer. And the prayer will be for diversity, unity, and community. Particularly related to the fact that we will just be coming in the midst of an election. I won't say the election will be over. Just to put some of the cards on the table, we invited the top 6 or 8 people in the community on economic development to participate with us next week, and they're all involved in election issues. And then we asked each of them if they would tape a presentation before next week, and they are all involved in election issues. We appreciate the work that they're doing. Vanessa will be with us on the 11th next week. Again, we will introduce the topic and we'll spend time praying. So I hope that most people will come, but we wanted to not do a bait and switch and let you know what's coming up next week. So the majority of the time will be in prayer if you choose to join us for that. So thank you again to this family of mine for being together in this struggle and this journey toward being anti-racist and working on being salt and light in racial injustice. Thank you.
Thanks, Rich.
Thanks for watching. We hope you found this meaningful. Please consider subscribing to this channel for more uplifting and meaningful content from Christ Presbyterian Church. For more information about us, check us out at cpcmadison.org.